Welcome back,
Welcome
everybody!
back!
As you already know, my lovely co-host and daughter, Luna.
It's me!
And I am Miss Red. And if you have been with
Yes,
us through this whole series, we want to say thank you.
yes,
Thank
thank
you for
you.
listening to us read the story. We hope that you liked it. We hope that it either relaxed you, put you to sleep at night, got you ready for the day, got you ready for camp. Like,
Yeah.
for camp. As you are well aware now, we are reading The Adventure Tale of 3020, a RSC story by George Edenbaum, aka Mr. Geo. And we are
For,
on
yes.
our final installment that we're aware of right now. I don't know if anything else is coming out after this or not. Um, but in this
Chapter 9.
video, yes, we are reading the final chapter of Chapter 9, June 20th, 2020.
And I will be playing Nadia, or voicing Nadia, and, no longer Sam, but I will also be, voicing Mason
And
for this.
the assistant lady.
Yes, an assistant lady.
And she is back, y'all. You may have heard in the last episode some different sounds. She's got some different special effects sounds now. So you keep your eyes peeled. I mean your ears peeled for that.
Maybe you guys can count the sounds. How
Yeah,
many
that'll be cool.
sounds?
Count the explosions. And I, of course, am Daryl. I have taken a liking to Daryl as a character. And I will also be Dr. Wu.
Yes.
And anything else that I can possibly think of. All right. So we begin with Chapter 9, June 20th, 2020. After the attacks on Christmas Eve, the Army had stepped up its efforts to get the Chosen, as they had become known, trained and ready to be put on whatever was to be a 20-year cryo-frozen state. They thought that in 20 years they surely would have defeated the GDI. Daryl, along with the resistance, had fought hard and valiantly for months, keeping the GDI out of Richmond, until the day came that the children and the few chosen adults would be put on their prolonged sleep. Today, that day was here, but unfortunately, the GDI was as well. The loud air raid sirens all over the town of Richmond sent everyone into a frenzy. Everyone knew that if the sirens were going off, it meant that the GDI was close, and the Chosen had to report to Richmond Elementary, from where the military would fly them out on a helicopter to a secret lab which was up on a nearby mountain overlooking the town. Everyone, go! Go! Hurry! Daryl, Mason, and the members of the resistance ushered the children towards the school gates, where heavily armored soldiers waited for them. Every mom and dad who would have to stay behind hugged and cried and said their goodbyes to their children. Dressed in her blue with yellow accents jumpsuit and carrying a small backpack given to all the children by the lab for their belongings, and her specially made mask, Nadia followed the rest of the children towards the gate. She stopped and began to sob.
No, I can't leave you, Dad.
Tears ran down her cheeks. Nadia sobbed uncontrollably. She stood there looking at her dad and would not move. Daryl walked up to her and got on his knees, placing both his hands on her shoulders. Shh, shh. He then wiped the tears from her face with both hands. Then placing his hands back on her shoulders, he said, Nadia, listen. I love you. I would never let anything happen to you. But if you stay here, you will die, and I cannot let that happen. Daryl then reached in his pocket and pulled something out. He extended his hand and opened it. It was a small pin, a souvenir from their last visit to Disneyland some years earlier. The pin was from Tomorrowland, Nadia's favorite part of the park. The pin had been something fun Daryl had picked up for Nadia, and when you pressed the center of the pin, it said random stuff. You remember this? Daryl and Nadia both smiled as they remembered that lovely day they got it. You always said you wanted to travel to the future and see a whole new world. Nadia nodded as she heard her dad remind her of what she said. This is going to be kind of like that. When you wake up, it will be the year 2040. I will be here waiting for you. I'll be old and wrinkled, but you will be just like you are today, and the world will be new. We will make it so while you are gone. Daryl teased, but Nadia knew very well the risks, and she knew that when she did wake up, there was a high probability her dad and everyone who stayed behind would be gone. Daryl then took the pin and pinned it to her jumpsuit. He sighed and looked down and got serious. Listen, Nadia, when you wake up, the world will be very different. I don't know if we will defeat these things or not, but I know I will never give up, just like you will not give up. It is up to you and your friends to undo the wrongs that we all created for many generations. You need to make the world new. That is your job. This is your destiny and the destiny of those kids right behind you. He pointed at the children who were all being rushed to the school and airlifted to safety. The last of the children were ushered inside, and Daryl embraced Nadia one last time. I love you, he whispered to her as she hugged her dad tightly.
I love you too, Dad,
She replied. Daryl broke from their embrace and sent her to the waiting soldiers. It's time to go. She sighed and then turned and slowly walked towards the soldiers. Once inside, they shut the gate. 2 helicopters full of children were getting off the ground when a loud explosion occurred just in front of the gate.
They're coming!
Mason shouted from a few meters away, catching Daryl's attention. Huh? Daryl then looked back to watch Nadia being helped onto another one of the helicopters.
We need to push forward and hold the line,
Mason ordered and rushed forward. Daryl and the rest of the resistance followed behind him, taking cover behind some nearby broken-off walls. They fired at the incoming sentinels, some of which stumbled and jittered, while sparks flared up on their armored bodies where rounds struck them. Behind the sentinels came the Titans, who were firing cannons at the targets they found. Stay down! Daryl yelled and motioned at Mason to keep his head down. The sentinels fired, barely missing Daryl, who had peered over the wall to see. He quickly got down and took cover again. Just as a hail of bullets struck the opposite side of the wall, he hid behind, sending splinters of stone and dust into the air. He looked around and saw the other members of the resistance not faring well either. Some had already been killed, yet most still fought fearlessly, firing relentlessly, even when wounded, trying to keep the machines from going after their children. Then Daryl felt something on his leg, and when he looked down, he saw a small guardian robot, no bigger than a good-sized cat, yet shaped like a spider, trying to climb up his leg. With a startled shout, "Ah!" he kicked it aside, sending it tumbling across the ground. Before the Guardian could recover, Daryl lowered his M4 and fired off a short burst at the robot, shattering it apart. Even as this happened, he heard something rocket over his head. A missile fired from a Titan shot so close to him, the top of his hair actually singed from its rocket. The projectile struck a jeep, turning it into a flaming mushroom cloud. Gritting his teeth, he turned his attention back to the incoming death machines. He aimed at the closest sentinel and opened fire.
Mother Puff Bucket!
Mason cursed when he ran out of ammo. He ducked down, ejecting the empty clip from his rifle and dug in his vest pocket for a fresh one. A shout drew his attention, and he spun around looking in the other direction, seeing a man lying on his back, fighting what looked like a robot spider that was almost as big as a dog. The thing was on his chest and attempting to stab him in the face with its dagger-like forelimbs. Mason fumbled with the new clip, trying to load it into his weapon and shoot the Guardian. Before he could do that, the man shooting over the barricade beside the one fighting the Guardian saw what was happening, spun around and snatched a hold of the spider-like robot by one of its legs, lifted it up and tossed the thing over the wall. Simultaneously, he was shot through the neck and promptly fell down.
Son of a bitch!
Mason growled as he slapped the fresh clip of ammunition into his M4, rose up and started shooting again, spending almost the entire clip, trying to shoot a sentinel in its sensitive, weak spots. Just before he ran out of bullets, he managed to blast both of the bot's arms off and saw it fall to the ground. A moment after that, there was a loud boom, and something shot over his head. It was a round fired from one of the M1A1 tanks which was shooting at a Titan.
Damn machines!
Mason grumbled and dug in his vest pocket for another clip. Seeing that, he didn't have much left. Gritting his teeth, he ejected the spent clip and slapped a fresh one in its place as he glanced around, seeing his friend.
We're outnumbered, and we're low on ammo!
Mason shouted at Daryl, who was firing shots at the incoming Titans. Daryl noticed he was also running out of ammo and sighed, took a deep breath, and shouted back, "Then let's give 'em everything we got!" Daryl stood up courageously from his cover and pointed his gun toward the machines and fired as he ran towards them. Their efforts were futile, as their shots ricocheted off the impenetrable steel the huge machines were made of. Some rounds flew back in the direction from where they came from, just barely missing Daryl and Mason. "You will not have
You will
them!"
not have him!
Daryl shouted as he charged forward, determined to push back the Titans. He hopped on the back of the closest sentinel to their line, barely holding on by any crevice he could find on the surface of the robot. The sentinel reached for Daryl with success, since Daryl was much smaller than the robot, and he threw him off harshly. Daryl landed on his back with a hard thump. He became temporarily disoriented from the impact. He blinked and opened his eyes, seeing the foot of the 2-ton machine about to stomp on him. From behind came Mason, who leaped onto the Titan's back, holding himself up from the top layer of its armor. Without knowing, he had grabbed onto a small door on the Titan's back, and it came open. This distracted the Titan long enough for Daryl to move away from its stomping foot. Mason stuck the barrel of his rifle inside the tiny door where he could see a lot of the wiring within, and he fired several shots. The Titan, in turn, reached back and took hold of Mason, whose grip was no match for the machine's power. It flung Mason forward and simultaneously shot its cannon. Daryl had moved aside and fired a few shots of his own, unaware of the door that Mason had found, and his shots simply bounced off the machine. He saw Mason, and his body landed a few yards away and rushed towards him. The Titan did not move. Instead, it just seemed to be short-circuiting, and then it blew up. The large explosion sent debris flying with such force that it knocked Daryl down as he was reaching out for Mason. Daryl sat up and looked at Mason, who laid on the ground unresponsive. "Mason!" Daryl shouted as he held him in his arms. "Come on, man!" He shook him as if it would bring him up or wake him up. "No, no, no!" Daryl cried, realizing his friend was gone and he had lost yet another loved one. Meanwhile, at the lab, which was supposed to be hidden high up on a nearby mountain, the children were descending from the helicopters that were bringing them. Dr. Wu and his team hurried to get the children and their chaperones prepared for the procedure.
Dr. Wu, we must hurry!
His assistant said, as she prepared the pods the children would be in. "This is a mistake. We're not ready yet. We cannot guarantee that nobody will wake before it's time." Dr. Wu worried, as they had yet to find a solution to the problem that had been holding them back.
We have to do it. More of them have a chance to live if we do this.
His assistant said as she got the last child into place. The children were overly excited, not in a good way. They were scared, and they were worried about their families they were leaving behind. "You are right," Dr. Wu replied, knowing what he had to do. "Let's do this." Dr. Wu looked at the children, who were all now in place. He saw the fear in their eyes, but there was no turning back now. Then Dr. Wu pressed the button, and the process began. The tanks slowly filled with the necessary blue liquid, as the children were slowly becoming less active. Back at the gates of the school, something happened. The Sentinels and Titans who had been engaged in battle with the members of the Resistance and the soldiers who had been pushing them back from the school grounds suddenly stopped firing. A few moments, everything was still and silent. "What the hell is going on?" Daryl thought as he stood up and looked at the machines, which now all stood still. The others who had been taking cover also came out and looked around. "Destroy all threats!
Destroy all threats!
Destroy all threats!" All the Titans simultaneously were heard saying, but they did not move. The humans were unaware that the robots had taken control of the launch system of every nuclear weapon around the world. Simultaneously, every nuclear weapon around the world was launched. Daryl and the others watched in awe as they saw rockets racing into the sky. At the lab, sirens started going off, startling Dr. Wu and his team, who were now finishing up the process of freezing the children and the chaperones. Dr. Wu and his assistant rushed outside to see what was happening and saw the rockets that were going up into the sky. They knew exactly what it was. Good God! Dr. Wu seemed incredulous at what he saw.
Dr. Wu, we need to go now.
His assistant shouted, unsure where they could go. Where would they be safe from nuclear destruction? Go get the team and get out of here. I'll be right behind you. Dr. Wu sent his assistant on her way, and he rushed back to the lab. He stood there in front of hundreds of children who he knew would need more than 20 years to find a world more habitable. He pondered for a moment, with each second that went by being 1 second nearer death. Finally, Dr. Wu sighed and entered the number of years the kids were made frozen into the computer. 1000. 1000. Dr. Wu talked to Sparks, who stood there waiting for the orders. Dr. Wu simply tapped it on the shoulder and said, "They're all yours. Take good care of them." Dr. Wu walked outside the lab and closed the very thick vault-like door. He knew there was nowhere anyone could go to stay safe, so they had to accept their fate. He walked down the cave tunnel, which had an opening overlooking Richmond and the nearby town of Tranquil Lake. He watched as the rockets began to make their descent. He knew that there was no need to run. He just looked up to the sky, turned around, and spoke to the children, even though they could not hear him. Be the change. Be our second chance. Right the woes that we have for generations wrought. The future is yours. Do something worthy of the sacrifices of us all. You are the chosen. Dr. Wu then knelt and closed his eyes as a flash of bright light flashed through everything that was visible. All was dependent on the chosen. They had 1,000 years to rest, and after that, make a change. The end. That was an intense chapter.
Oh my god. Yes.
Like, holy cannolis. I have so many questions. So many.
Hold all your cannolis.
I'm holding them. Wow, guys. We have finished the book. And now we'll move on to some letters that are being posted as well that also tie into the storyline, which you will be able to see on the screen. June 26, 2040. Entry log number 253. Item, personal letter. Location found, Tranquil Lake. Item was scanned and saved to archives. Transcript, June 26, 2040. Dear Nadia, it is 6 days since you should have woken. They lied to us. Or maybe the process didn't work. I can only blame myself for putting you through this, my dear princess. I am sorry. I have never given up and won't until I see you again. Today, we destroyed 2 sentinels. Last week, we even managed to destroy a titan. We learned that if we salvage the scraps from destroyed sentinels, we could melt their steel, which we still don't know what exactly it's made of, and we can forge our own bullets, which can then pierce the titan's armor. But as you can imagine, the sentinels have become smarter and have become harder to kill. Dad. July 4th, 2040. Entry log number 626. Item, personal letter. Location found, Tranquil Lake. Item was scanned and saved to archives. Transcript, July 4th, 2040. Dear Princess, not a day goes by that I don't think of you. I'm sorry I put you through this. There aren't many of us left. The few of us who survived the blasts of Annihilation Day have dwindled in numbers. The GDI is still stronger than us and continues to hunt us down, and yet some others have died from complications from blasts, I am sure. For that reason, I am in a way glad you and your friends are still safe. I don't know how long until this place will be safe again, but I hope I make it through to see you again. Today I held my own 4th of July celebration. I killed a guardian and a sentinel. I blew them up. It was like watching fireworks. Do you remember how we used to go watch the fireworks every year with Mom? Oh, how I wish you were here. Dad. And the last one. August 19th, 2040. Entry log number 911. Item, personal letter. Location found, Tranquil Lake. Item was scanned and saved to archives. Dear Nadia, today I found a cave, which I don't think we have ever known was there. It is just north of the town of Tranquil Lake, a few minutes' hike up the mountain into the woods. I think it's a great place for shelter, so I will make this my new home. It is not much, but it is cozy. Of course, it would be better with you and Mom here. I think I will stock up on supplies, and any of the scraps I gather from those things. They may come in handy. Dad. That is the end for now, everybody. From what I
To
understand.
be continued.
Yes, exactly. From what I understand, as we near closer to camp, we will be receiving more chapters, possibly maybe more letters. So hang on to your hats. If you need to keep re-watching these up until the moment of camp, do so. Think about some questions that you have. Leave them in the comments down below. I definitely have some. I know Luna has some theories. Let's brainstorm about this.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen?
Give us your theories.
Yes, we want to hear your theories. We can't wait to see you guys at camp, and we can't wait to figure out how this goes down. Until then, see you guys later.